And off of that, I would say if you're out there listening and you're like me or you're like Lee, hire the other part done. If you don't have a counterpart or a brother, hire that thing that you don't like done and let them become a part of your team. Yeah. Even if it's just a contractual basis, you don't need them all the time, whether it's that it's accounting or whatnot. We did a podcast kind of on that specific thing, is how important it is to know and understand your strengths. And we focus on people's strengths and system weaknesses. So just make sure that whatever it is that you're good at, what I'm good at, what Luke's good at, those happen to be complementary in this type of setting, running a chain of laundromats. And so know your strengths. And if there's an area that you're weak in or you don't have an interest in or not as passionate about, then that's when you go and you create a job description and say, this is the type of person I'm looking for to do this type of work. And you hire that person. It's very scary. Hiring that person is very scary, but you can't operate out of fear. So set yourself a budget. Do some Indeed searching, some wherever you want to find your folks. Always through a referral. Yeah. Right. Right. For sure. Pray for the person who's looking for that job. Yeah. And that is extremely important to make sure, like you said, you can develop that traction before you know it. The word rocket is important to us. You've got that rocket fuel and you're heading to the moon. Yep. A few years ago, we hired an office administrator to help Lee and I out. And basically we met with her and said, we're going to try to get everything that's between our 2 ears and your 2 ears. And she's sitting in the office next to us. And after a few years, she could literally run the whole show. And I say that to say, people have more capacity than you would think. Even in the laundromat in your store, if you're going to scale what you do, you have to have problem solvers everywhere, at every line of defense, from your laundry attendant. We call them store managers. We want them to be enabled, empowered to solve problems, not to pass it on to somebody else. I want them to have the authority to make those decisions. Yeah, they only pass it on to an upline or headquarters a problem if they cannot solve it after they've tried everything, And back to skill sets, I have some store attendants who are not good cleaners, but they're fantastic at engaging with customers. Yeah. They're fantastic at building relationships. It's not 50-50. Maybe it's 60-40, 70-30 at most. And then I've got some cleaners that are amazing at cleaning, but they just aren't as good with people. So we try to balance those in the stores together. And it works. What's the path to get to be able to hire that other one? Do you forego profits for a while and hire the other one in hopes of growing? Do you do all the tasks yourself until you can get to a point where you can afford to hire and keep some of the profits? Do you guys have any advice on, how do you get past that initial hurdle of you got to have something here to be able to go out and hire a quality person, a high caliber person to fill that other role that you're in? You got any advice for us? Yeah. So two things come to my mind initially. You definitely have to have the margin. You have to have the profit margin to be able to compensate that person. And I think you also have to have a mindset of growth to bring that person on. If you are a one store owner and let's say this is your full-time gig, you may not need that other person to be a full-time employee. You may be able to outsource it to somebody in the gig economy, or hire an assistant for $10 an hour who just kind of does your bookkeeping or something. If you are going to grow into 3, 4, 5 stores, you need to make sure that in your budget, however you set up your finances, that you have some cushion to be able to pay that person when you hire them. And then an anticipation of growth in sales to be able to cover that person's expense. Yeah. And, would you say that you would recommend hiring over partnering, bringing on a partner? Because there's, yeah, go ahead. Yes, definitely. Yeah. We are in the unique position that we're brothers. We love each other dearly.
I feel like one of the most important aspects of my job is to make sure that our relationship is always extremely stable, very healthy, because if it weren't, that just creates such downflow into the organization, and so many people would be affected by it. So it is extremely important. So if you bring in a partner, especially someone you're going to work with, you need to vet that person significantly, and especially if you're going to give up equity, that you just have to consider what type of equity am I willing to give up versus what type of budget can I afford to pay this person a salary, because if things go south, separating with employee to employer is a lot easier than any sort of partnership.
And typically partnerships are established not for the qualities, but for the cumulative resources. And there's financing partners for the capital, for the money. Mm-hmm. There's financing partners out there who will partner with you without taking equity, typically. And if you're going to grow this thing from 1 to 2 to 3, on the self-service side, our regional managers cover 5 to 7 locations. So we found that's a good capacity for a regional technician / manager. So he's doing all the facility maintenance. Any issues, he calls the subcontractors. They do annual services, HVAC, plumbing, stuff like that. We sub out HVAC work and plumbing work if it's higher level. But as far as washers and dryers, they do all the maintenance and repairs on those. But 5 to 7 self-service locations, we've got about 7 of those guys, which
in a pretty tight geographic area for each of those. Yeah. Mm-hmm.